y'all, it's Zoe and welcome back to another video on my channel. I was wearing a really cute sweater earlier today and I definitely wanted to film something in that sweater, but then I got home from dinner and I was like, oh, I really want to change because it's the nighttime. Totally forgot I was going to film this, but it kind of worked out because my sweater got shrimp guts on it. I was very sad about it. It was just on the sleeve, but it was a new sweater. So I'm really hoping and praying that it comes out. Also, I hope I don't sound too sick. I have a teeny tiny cold. So anyways, I'm not really sure where this video is gonna go. Like, I don't really have a set structure for it. But I kind of mentioned in my video last week about the language barrier, being an adoptee in Taiwan, and how that has been difficult sometimes. And so kind of going off of that, I've been doing a lot of thinking here about the language, and it's brought up a lot of struggles with being Chinese / being an adoptee. So I'm kind of going to be talking about that in today's video. I kind of had this problem in China, which I had mentioned in my last video as well, with the language barrier and the idea that outward I look Chinese, Taiwanese. So when I'm just out on the street by myself, or if I'm not really like talking or anything, I look like I blend in and that I could live here. And even when I'm like with all the other Fulbrighters, like in a really big group, I feel like a lot of times the local people kind of turn to me because they expect me to be able to understand what they're saying. And they don't think to ask the white people first, if that makes sense. So that has kind of brought up a lot of thoughts in my mind about the future and going back to the US. And living here for so long and working with children who are learning English as a second language has also kind of brought that on as well. And I think a lot of it started when I started watching Fresh Off the Boat, which is actually kind of weird. So, I mean, growing up, I had always wondered what it would have been like if I grew up either in China or with a Chinese family. And a lot of times during COVID, I thought that a lot as well because of all of the discrimination and hate crimes towards the Asian American community, and just the fact that I could not really relate in the same way that other Asian Americans in the US could relate. So I have always had this kind of thought in the back of my head for a while, but then like being here is kind of heightened it. And where Fresh Off the Boat comes into play is I had heard about the show and I absolutely love Randall Park and Constance Wu. I think they are great actors and actresses. And it's available here on Disney Plus. Because a lot of the Hulu shows in the US, they have on Disney Plus here, and you can only get Netflix and Disney and YouTube. So I literally watched the entire Fresh Off the Boat show, and what I didn't realize is in the show they came from Taiwan, like their family was Taiwanese. It's a very generational show where it's 3 generations in one household. Obviously, because of that generational difference, it's kind of very similar to a lot of immigrants in the US where the older generations don't really speak English, but the middle generations and the kids do, because they've either been born in the US or they moved to the US to find a better life, so they had to learn English, but then their parents don't speak it. So because of that, they had to speak in Chinese at home, or at least in the show, the grandmother only speaks in Chinese and they respond to her in English. So she can obviously understand English, but it isn't really until like the end of the show that she starts learning English for herself. But anyways, where I'm going with this is basically, I did not have that growing up. Obviously, I grew up speaking English as my first and only language. I learned other languages like Spanish and French and Chinese, of course, but also meeting a lot of people here. There are some people who did grow up in Chinese speaking households. There are people who grew up in Cantonese speaking households. And I feel like a lot of times with Asian Americans, I see a lot about, especially on social media, about people my age or people like around my age who have to use their ethnically native language when they talk to their relatives, and I never had that. And I know there's like that paradigm of like people who have really good listening and speaking skills but not so good reading and writing skills, and I think that does have to do a lot with like growing up around language. So being here in Taiwan and being able to teach these kids English has made me think a lot about like children and children speaking multiple languages. And it's made me want to try to raise my future kids bilingual, which I know is kind of weird because I don't speak it fluently, although I wish I did. I feel like I'm close, but not close enough, because there's still a lot of times where I'm not really understanding. I can piece things together and make sense of the situations, but there's still a lot of vocabulary that I'm not familiar with. I try to watch shows in Mandarin, and I've tried listening to Mandarin music as well. My skills are just not really where I would like them to be, but even like living here, I feel like they're starting to get better, but they're still not as good as like someone who, say, grew up here or has Mandarin speaking parents. So I didn't think a lot about raising my kids bilingual, just because I didn't get that opportunity, and I think it would be really cool if they could. Whether that means we have to move to China or Taiwan for their formative years so we can ingrain in their brain, like I would do it if I can get a job. I considered like when they're a baby, you know, talking to them in Chinese, teaching them Chinese words and as well as English words, because obviously they're going to be in the US, so they need to know English. But I've thought of like trying to find bilingual children's books and TV shows and music and stuff like that, because I feel like it'd be really cool if they were bilingual, first of all, but I guess sometimes I just worry, like, is me not being fluent going to affect that? So I've thought about doing like immersion schools and stuff like that. It's like the language barrier is definitely something hard when you're thinking about day-to-day life, but it also almost makes you feel like there's like a part of you that's like missing, that you want to be there. I'm not sure if everyone out there feels that way, but for me at least, like knowing the language is part of being Chinese, and like not having that growing up is difficult when you're trying to live and work in a country that uses that language. And again, everything I say about like what I didn't have, it's not to discredit what I do have. I recognize how privileged I am and how privileged I was to grow up. I definitely would not trade the life that I have now, but obviously there's always a few things, even with people who aren't adopted, there's always like one or two things that you always wonder what would be different if, which isn't to discredit what your current situation is. So I just want to say that I recognize how lucky I am, and I am very grateful for all the opportunities and things that I'm given that not everyone else can be given. But the language barrier is definitely really hard, and it kind of jabs at you when you physically look like you shouldn't have a language barrier, and so sometimes that's been difficult, and not being able to understand what people are saying to you. So yeah, I always wondered what it would be like if I was bilingual myself, and that is a goal for me in the future, to have bilingual children. I don't know how successful I will be, but that is kind of where my mind has been going since I've been here. I've been here for about 3 months now, so like I said, I had no idea where this video was going, but I wanted to make it. It's kind of like an identity crisis, but like not really, I guess. But yeah, so let me know if you feel the same way in the comments down below, because yeah, I'm not really, I don't know, it's just like I guess it's like a very niche feeling. But yeah, that's kind of where my head has been at recently, if that makes sense. So this was just kind of like a really random rant. A lot of my videos are rants, especially when I start Vlogmas this year. It's gonna be just me literally doing nothing and like ranting to you all about random stuff going on in my life. But anyways, that's pretty much it for this video. So I'm going to go now and continue relaxing and get ready for bed in about an hour or so. So I will see you all next week. I'm not really sure what video I'm gonna do yet. I had an idea, but then I didn't like it, so we'll see. So yeah, I'm gonna go now, but I will see you all later. Bye.